Okay. All right. So like I said, this is my name is Tyler Brinks. We're going to be doing a webinar on finesse fishing and some other techniques, but mainly finding bass with your electronics. We're going to cover a lot of cool different topics. If you have any questions, just go ahead and ask them at any time. You know, I can see that in the chat here, and I'll either respond to them right away, or I will you know, get to them at the end. So how's it going, Adam? Okay, we've got people from all over. Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Share my screen, get into the presentation. All right, that was awesome. So basically what happened is it restarted. So good, you guys are all still there. Okay. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and go into sharing my screen. Thanks for your patience with this. You wanted me to update the software, which is awesome. Okay. Okay, so just the agenda that we're gonna do, ways to maximize electronics. We're gonna talk about video game fishing, graph setup, some screenshot interpretations. We're going to talk about Google Earth, and then some Navionics products, and then the Q&A. Okay, go back to that one. Thanks for bearing with me here, as it's having some issues. Okay, so, you know, talking about different ways to maximize electronics. You know, marine electronics, obviously, you know, most people have graphs on their boat. It's a huge way to do it. We're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to talk about some apps, internet research, and mapping software, you know, because all of them are electronic tools that I use to catch more bass. And, you know, hopefully you'll learn something from this to, you know, further your fishing as well. So again, if you're just joining us, this will be recorded and it will be put on YouTube afterwards. I'll put it on my YouTube, which you can just search Tyler Brinks, and that's the channel name. It'll be on there, and it'll also be on the Navionics YouTube page as well. Okay, so we're going to go right into it, and we'll talk about video game fishing. And I get a lot of questions about this, and basically, you know, what is it? I mean, basically, it's using your graphs to see and then drop to those fish, just like playing a video game. It's something that I am addicted to, and it's a great technique, and we're going to talk about how I do it, what I look for, you know, different baits that I use, and some other tips that I've learned along the way, you know, as far as boat positioning and things like that. You know, really the baits that I use mostly, almost 90% of the time, is a drop shot. You know, also use spoons, blade baits, really anything vertical, you know, like a Nico rig will work as well. But really, you just want to get it down there quickly and be able to fish that technique vertically. You know, graph setup and boat positioning are key, and we're going to cover those two things. I'll tell you exactly what I change on my graph. And I use Lowrance, but it's very similar for Humminbird and other things as well when we're talking about things like ping speed and things to look for. But then also the boat positioning is a really key thing. Because, you know, we'll kind of get into it, but if you think about it, if your boat moves over a couple feet, you know, what you've seen on the graph, maybe 5 to 10 feet to the left or right. And if you're not right where the fish were on the screen, you're basically wasting your time. I mean, the fish may go over there and still bite the bait, but you want to get it down right to what you're seeing on the screen. Okay. I'm going to pause here real quick and, you know, kind of restart, because there are some more people just joining us. But if you have any questions, you can feel free to shoot those at any time. We'll take a couple breaks periodically to answer those questions, and we'll get those all the way at the end. We'll just spend time answering all those questions. So, you know, as far as video game baits, you know, drop shot is #1 bait. You know, smaller baits is usually what I use. You know, baits with that are going to drop a lot quicker. So typically smaller baits, you know, 3 and 4 inch minnow baits. And, you know, when I drop shot and I'm vertically fishing, I use a wacky rig a lot, and I use some bigger baits. But with this technique, you want something that's streamlined, that's going to get down there quickly. A wacky rig or bulk of your bait is not going to sink down as quick. And again, that's going to affect how soon you can get your bait into what you're seeing on the screen. And the same thing with the heavier weights. Typically when I'm drop shot fishing and casting and retrieving it, I'm going to be using an 1/8 ounce, a 3/16, or 1/4 ounce. But when I'm video game fishing, completely opposite, way bigger, 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce, and even an ounce. And again, you're not casting it. So even if you have a medium light rod, or, if you have a, light spinning rod with light line, you could still use that heavier weight, because all you're doing is dropping it to the fish. And that's just going to allow it to get down there quickly into the screen. And a lot of times, the second it gets down there to where the fish are, that's when you're going to get bit. So the faster you can do it, the better. You can also do it with blade baits, jigging spoons. They're heavy. They get down really quickly. Ice jigs, that's a thing that I use quite a bit. Like the Rapala ice jig. It has a, treble hook on the bottom, and it has a single hook on the top. I think I actually have one sitting over here. I'll grab that in a minute. But that's another great technique for video game fishing. But really, it's anything that you can be fishing vertically. Nico rig as well. It's actually Neko rig, but everyone calls it a Nico rig. Okay. We're going to pause here for just a second and see if we have any questions here. Okay, apologize for this. It's giving me some issues here. Thanks for bearing with me. Again, I apologize for this, everybody. Screen keeps closing me out. Okay. All right, good. So like I said, it keeps kicking me out. So is everyone able to see it right now? Hey, Al, sorry about that. Right now, it keeps kicking me out of it. So I really apologize for this. Okay, good. So it sounds like we're good. It says launching. Okay, we're gonna work through this, and like I said, this will be on YouTube. I'll clean out all this stuff and edit it, but we'll make sure that it's all good. So, okay. So good question, Charles. How do you circle back to find the spot that you marked quickly? That's a great question, and I think this is a good time to kind of pause as people are rejoining because of the issues that we're having. But the question was from Charles, and it's how do you find the spot? Say you fish, you see a fish, and the wind's blowing away. I mean, it is a challenge. I mean, one thing you can do is you can pause your screen and then scroll back, or just scroll back to your screen and hit a waypoint on that, and that'll be exactly where that fish was. You can do that on Lowrance. You can scroll back for days. So, that's a good way to do it, and that's really the only thing I could think of that, to get that exact spot, but otherwise it's, like I said, the key is to just get it down there right away. Okay, so good question. Okay, so we got people still having issues. Okay. Okay, Chris, we will get into that question about ping speed, so I'm gonna jump right into that. And again, I apologize, guys. I've done a lot of these, and this is the first time it's given me any issues. So, okay. Okay, can everyone see that now? Okay, all good, good. Thank you, guys. Again, thanks for your patience here. Okay, so, with the video game fishing, this is what you should be seeing on your graph. With a blade bait where you're working it up and down, there's a lot of action, but if you have everything set up right, and we're gonna talk about that, we've had some questions, but this is what you're gonna see. You're gonna see everything that your bait's doing. This is with the blade bait. that is constantly be going up and down. This is the bait, you know, this is still the trail from my line going down, and then this is the bait working. Now this is what you really want to see. This is when you are doing that and you catch a fish. So as you can see here, this is my line going down. This is me working the bait. You can see the fish streaking through here, the bigger red streak. That's a fish that's very active, that is ready to go. So I am working this bait above it, trying to get as close to it as I can. There you go. That's where the fish strikes right there. And that's me reeling it in. And then it loses track right by the trolling motor. But this is what you should always, you know, this is what you dream of, is being able to see the fish bite and catch it on screen. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and stop here. We got tons of questions, so I'm going to just answer these just so we can kind of keep caught up on them. So Ernest says, what's your palette setting? I do like the number 13, which is this one, has some browns. The fish really show up as a good solid red most of the time. You know, they really just pop out for me. You know, there's tons of different palette choices for Lowrance and Humminbird, so really just pick the one that you like and one that works for you. So the other one from Brad, are you sitting still in these photos? So this is actually a screenshot from Lowrance. And if you guys have Lowrance units, you can take screenshots like this without having to take a cell phone picture. Just hit the power and pages button and it will save it to your graph. And then you use an SD card to take it off later on. It's really cool. It's just like taking a screenshot on your iPad or your phone or anything else. It just saves it there and you get a lot clearer picture than trying to, and no reflection than if you're just taking a picture with your cell phone. Okay. Derek said, how do you scroll back on your Lowrance? And I personally use a touchscreen unit, so it kind of depends on the unit, but on a touchscreen, you just actually just scroll back. It's like a recording of everything that you've seen, which is really cool. You know, that's on the newer HDS units that have that touchscreen capability. It's really easy, and it keeps a lot of, you know, I don't know how far back it goes, but it's quite a ways. So if you're, say you're idling and you're like, oh, what did I see? You can actually scroll back and hit that exact spot, waypoint it, you know, whether it's a rock or a stump or anything else. Okay. Okay, great. There's tons of good questions. So I like this. On the screen, is that a bait above the bottom, or the bait is above? This is a fish right here. Oh, is it bait? Yeah, this is actually some kind of bait fish. You know, I live in Washington State, so this is probably a bunch of little perch or something. We don't have shad, so I'm guessing that's what it is. Okay. Good question, Kim. I like to have, the question is 2D sonar. Do you like the 200K or 83K? I always like the max power. It's just going to give you more amplification, faster, and everything else. So solid question. Okay, so, you know, like I said, I'm going to give you a few more tips and secrets that I've learned. You know, boat position is key. I kind of mentioned that already, but, you know, the faster you drop it down, the better. You want to, if you see something barely at the just touching into your screen, just drop it. And there's a lot of times that I'm actually out there and I'm not casting or dropping. I'm just sitting there holding my bait, holding the line, my bail flipped over, and just waiting, just looking around until I see it. Because otherwise you may be down there and then you'll see something, you know, the boat's moving along and you got to reel it up and drop it back down. So I am just basically walking around like I'm hunting or something, just waiting for the time to drop it. And also, you know, watch how the fish is acting. A lot of times it's going to be really subtle. You're just going to see a little nub on the bottom. You know, bass in particular, when it's cold, are really basically glued to the bottom a lot of times, you know, and they'll be hidden in between rocks. So you'll just be looking for a little bit different, you know, arch or a little bit different of color there, a little bit of red. But when it's streaks, that's when they're moving quickly, they're aggressive, and, you know, they're going to really bite anything. They're feeding on something, you know, kind of like that screenshot. There was those bait fish moving along, you know, I dropped it down there right where the fish was and was able to catch that fish. So, you know, that's again, like I keep saying, that's what you dream for. Roy, good question on what about chirp sonar? And, you know, if you guys aren't familiar with that, that's just basically, it's a very simple terms, it's just a stronger powered sonar that's going to shoot down faster and have more target separation. You know, it's a very cool technology. Personally, the graphs that I have don't have chirp. You know, I would love to have it, but it's not necessary. I run the right now I have the Gen 2 Touch, which is a couple years old, but it still works just fine. And, kind of going sidetracked a little bit, but, everyone thinks you have to have like the most expensive graph and everything else. It's not true. You just have to be able to read them right. You need to be able to know what you're looking for and have them set up right. I've been in boats that have 10 or 15-year-old graphs and you could still do it. So you don't have to go out and spend $3,000 on a 12-inch HDS graph right now, and you could still do it as long as you just practice reading the sonar, knowing what you're seeing, and have them set up right. So awesome. I love these questions, guys. Keep them coming. But Michael says, is this a good technique for the winter time? Yeah, absolutely. Anytime that the fish are deep, which typically in the winter they are, same with the summer, that it's an awesome technique when there's a lot of baits that you can't get to them. You could cast a jig around all day, but it's a great technique to look for specific fish that are on the bottom that aren't aggressive, or even if they are aggressive, it's a great technique. So, we're going to talk about transducers a little bit, and this seems really simple, but you need to know exactly where it is. I've done video game fishing from the front of the boat, obviously, but I've done it a lot of times on my back graph as well. So I know exactly where that transducer is, so I can get down to right under what is shown there. So for instance, on my boat, it's right in between where I have a power pole and my engine. So it's right there on the port side. So I know exactly where it is, or actually it's on this port side, but I know exactly where it is, and I can drop it right in between the power pole and the engine, and it will be right there. But also on the front graph, knowing exactly where it is, if it's on the external mount or if it's, inside of the head of the trolling motor, just knowing exactly where it is and trying to drop it as close to it as possible. But if you're on the front deck, don't wrap your line in the trolling motor prop, obviously. But I found that lately, this should actually say internal, I really prefer the external mounts like this. This is the Lowrance HDI. I just think it gets a lot better picture, versus the internal one. A lot of the trolling motors come with a transducer inside, and that's fine. I actually have them both rigged up. I have internal and external. One, so if I ever have a problem with one of them, I can just swap the cable and plug it in. I mean, both my cables are sitting there. I know which one is which, but I always try to do the external mount. So with the Lowrance HDI, this, for capable units, this allows you to actually get downscan imaging as well as the traditional sonar. So it's pretty cool. You can get a different view. I really like 2D sonar mostly for this technique. It's just it just shows everything. So, downscan just kind of gives you a different picture. And I personally use it if, I want to see what exactly it is. Maybe you see a blob down there, switch over to downscan, and it will show, oh, that's a tree, that's a brush pile, that's something else. But with 2D, I just think you can see fish a lot better because of the different colors. And that's just a preference though. But again, you could just use any 2D sonar that basically every graph in the last 20 years is capable of doing this. Okay. All right, so I've got a couple questions. I'm going to talk about, oh, Mario, yep, it is money when they're schooling in the summer. Oh yeah, definitely, and winter. Charles, so maybe clarify your question a little bit. You're talking about when you're fishing the speed, or when you're idling along, and we'll kind of move on, but good question. And Jerry, we'll get to your question. Okay. So, here's the settings. This is really I think the heart of it, is these three things, really just the first two are the ones that I play with a lot. So the ping speeds, and basically what this is how fast the sonar pings to the bottom and comes back up. So you want that as fast as you can, turn it all the way up, because it's going to show a lot more live updates of what's happening. A lot of times they're set at a default, like a slow speed, and the screen is just kind of moving along. You want it like scrolling, which you obviously have to pay a little bit more attention, but it's going to be a more live picture of what's there. You're not going to see something that's 10 feet over to the left or right. So it's going to be a lot more current. But again, you're going to have to be down there and dropping it right on there. But I always turn that ping speed up. There's another option. This is for Lowrance. I don't know exactly what it's called on Humminbird, but they call it the surface clarity. And you can actually change it to low, medium, or high. And high will actually clean up the screen. It will look really clear and beautiful, and basically just a white screen a lot of times. but at the same time, you miss a lot of things because it reduces some of the picture that's in there. So for me, I'd rather have it be a little bit messy and, you know, some stuff floating around and having a better picture of what's actually down there than anything else. So I actually turn it down to low or medium, just so you don't remove any of that clutter stuff, but it actually gives you're not going to miss anything as well. You know, we had this question earlier on the, Yep, right. Yep. Thanks for clarifying that. So scroll speed and ping speed, I like both of them to be live. So they are two different things, but thank you for clarifying that. I kind of grouped them together. So the color palette, you know, we talked about this earlier. I like the number 13. It just has that brown bottom. The fish show up as reds and greens and yellows. Donald, what zoom sonar do you use? I don't change anything on that. I just have it set up as default for the zoom, because you can do that. But yeah, these are great questions. Keep sending them on. We're going to do a little bit of screenshot interpretations. And, you know, I didn't really mention this at the beginning, but I am an outdoor writer, so I do a lot of articles. You know, I've been doing a series of articles for westernbass.com, and I'll put the links if you're watching this on YouTube. But I use pros. I take screenshots and send it to these pros, and they actually tell me what they see, because, you know, I know a lot about it, but they live and die by their graph every single day. So I'm going to kind of show you what they see from my screenshots. And I mentioned this too, but screenshots, just for Lowrance, hit power and pages at the same time. You can get a lot better screenshots than just taking a cell phone pic. So this one has a lot going on. Like I said, this has a lot of clutter. You know, this is my graph. This is from Lake Roosevelt, Washington. There's all kinds of little red bait fish in here. You could see this right here. There is a bunch of fish here. And, you know, I talked to Brandon Card. He said this is a brush pile with large bait fish, probably white bass. Actually, they're not, because it's Lake Roosevelt, but it's probably perch or something else. You know, all the purple dots, I mean, you guys can all read this, but he talks about the different sizes of the fish. You know, if they're on the fringe of the cone, you know, without getting too technical, you know, there can be some deception with what you're seeing on there if you're just seeing the tail end of a fish, or if a fish is moving away. But he's saying that it could be, they could be the same size fish that are just, we're not getting the full glimpse of it. But it was pretty interesting to see his take on something that I saw. This is a very good spot that I found. Took a screenshot because there was a lot going on, and that's what he saw from it. Okay, so this is another one. This is another one that I sent to Brandon Card, and he goes, you know, this big blob on the side is, you know, a large brush pile or tree, and it was a tree, which he was right. And you could see the fish, the bait fish, and you could see these streaks. You know, this is a fish going crazy, getting ready to eat something, probably a bass trying to eat some perch. So, you know, like he said, he can tell they're feeding on it because he sees these streaks, you know, going up and down. You know, there's a fish that was down here, maybe in that tree, sees this school of bait fish going by and just bolts up there to check it out, probably eat them. So it was cool seeing his take on that. And this was basically exactly what was happening. Okay, so this is one more, and you can see this one has a lot, like I was saying, like my screen's not always perfectly clear, but I'm not going to miss anything. You know, you can see there's all different types of bait fish. You know, there's little ones, there's, you know, these bigger ones, you know, with the big thick arches, which is something you need to look for, because that's typically going to be, you know, a lot bigger fish, because it just the density and what is shown there. This is Luke Lawson. He said that, you know, it looks like mid-sized bait fish like perch or bluegill swimming through here, just based on the size of it. So that's pretty cool. So, you know, we talked about a lot with 2D sonar and video gaming, but, you know, another thing that I use a lot for finding, not necessarily fish, you know, personally, but finding structure and different objects is Sidescan. So this is pretty cool area that I found. I was just idling along. You can see the shadow here. There's a rock there. There's, you know, all these indentations. So, you know, I talked to, who's this one for? Luke Lawson, and he said the small indentations on the right, you know, is typically where you'd find bluegill beds, just because they have those saucer-looking objects. But, you know, it's 22 feet deep, so it's probably not. So it's most likely a change from hard bottom to a muddy bottom, and you could kind of see that transition here as the color is changing, from a bright white to, more of a darker color with shadow. So it's probably a transition from hard to soft bottom. Okay, here's another cool one, and this one was from Jordan Lee. Okay, so I sent this to him, and it was basically the same thing. It's a screenshot of, Sidescan, and you could see there's a transition. You could see all these little rocks here. You can see where it changes bottom composition. Basically, it looks like a bunch of chunks of rock, and then you could see all these bait fish above the rocks. So, and he says there's also some grass on the shoal, but I guess it's just because of the, the fuzzy appearance. So, there's some grass over here, there's bait fish. So it's pretty cool to see his take on what I saw in my graph. There was a lot of bluegill, actually, is what it was. There was just piles of them everywhere. I could see them coming up and down. So that's actually what it was, and that's what he saw. They were just really small bluegill. Okay, so if you guys have any other questions, like I said, just go ahead and shoot them over. I think I've covered everything that we've had so far. We're going to kind of move along into a different segment. Okay, good. Again, thanks everyone for your patience for sticking around after that thing kept crashing. Okay, so I'm going to go, I didn't cover this question, but Chris said, when searching for fish, what speed do you cover water at? And, using the Sidescan, you can go pretty fast. I mean, not like 70 miles an hour, but you can go 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour. The problem is staying on plane. So usually I'm just going idling as fast as I can without having to work driving the boat. So that could be 6 or 7 miles an hour. You can do it faster, but you just got to really pay attention to both where you're driving and what you're looking at. So it's kind of dangerous. So really about, a fast idle, I would say, is what I prefer. Okay, so like I said, we're going to talk about a lot of different ways that I use electronics. One is Google Earth, and I've covered this in a webinar a couple years ago on pre-fishing using technology. I love Google Earth. I use it all the time. Same with Bing, and I'll kind of talk about the differences, the Bing Maps and the Google Earth. But you can do it from your phone, on the lake. You could do it with GPS, so you don't always have to cell service. I always bring my iPad with me for both mapping for Navionics. I always have it in the boat, and then for Google Earth. So when you're on the website, from your desktop, there's a really easy way to go through. You hit the clock icon, and it will have historical data, and that's really cool because you can look at periods where the water is really low or really high, to find backwaters or to find road beds that are visible when the water was lower. There's a lot of ways to use it with Google Earth. A lot of you guys probably already do this, but I use it all the time. And then you can use the pin feature to save those waypoints and then export them to your graph. It does take a little bit of work, but it's very easy to do. Just Google, export waypoints to Lowrance or whatever it is. There's a lot of stuff out there. I'm not going to cover that. Just use Google. It's really easy to get steps to do it. It's not necessarily easy to do it, but it's easy to find out how to do it. Okay, so Bing Maps, same principle. There's just different satellite images. A lot of times they're the same, but a lot of times they're different. So I always check them both because some may be more clean or a little bit more clear. If one of them was taken when there was a lot of clouds, sometimes they're not as clear. So, check them both. Okay, same thing. You can export. You can make pins. You can export them to a KML format. Again, Google this if it's too much to think about right now. You can just Google how to export Bing Maps to Hummingbird. There's tons of stuff out there. Okay, so we had a question about this earlier. So we're going to talk about Navionics a little bit. Someone asked if I prefer the CMAP, I think is what it was, or Lowrance or Navionics. I use Navionics exclusively and mostly just because there's so many more lakes, especially where I live. There's tons of lakes, and it's also constantly being updated by people like myself that are just adding detail to all the lakes that they fish. And it's something I do all the time. Like I said, with my iPad, it doesn't take any extra work. I just have my graph connected to my Navionics app. It's recording all the time. Once my iPad is back to cell phone or Wi-Fi range, it sends it to Navionics. It updates it within a week for everybody. Then you update your card or your app, and it's changed. So definitely love using the Navionics products because of that, because it's constantly getting better. So, you know, a question I get all the time is the differences between the cards. And honestly, it's pretty confusing, or it was. There was even more options, but really the three main ones are the Hot Maps Platinum, the Navionics Plus, and the Navionics Regions. I like the Navionics Regions. One, it's the cheapest one. It's $149. It has all the detail that you would need, and you just plug it in and go. It's just based on the region. Good question, Jerry. So this is all the stuff that I am recording. His question was, is this private or public data? This is public. So everything that I'm doing helps everybody else. You know, and some people have a hesitation for that. You know, they say, hey, I'm doing this work, but everybody gets the benefit of it. But on the other hand, it's not restricted to just Lowrance or just Humminbird or just Garmin or just anything else. Everybody who has Navionics, which is by far the most popular, is all helping each other, the maps for each other. So it's constantly getting better for everybody of all over the place with any type of graph. So also the mobile app, you know, that's a great thing. Chart viewer, and then the Sonar Chart Live, and I'll kind of run through those. And good question, Kim. I think I'm going to talk about that. So I'll just wait just a minute. I think it's on the next slide or so. Okay, so which Navionics card? I got ahead of myself. This is the one, best detail, plug and play. You know, one card, you can eliminate a lot of paper maps. It's really easy to use. Cheapest one, best detail. The main difference between this and the more expensive Platinum is this does not have the satellite overlay, and it doesn't allow the 3D view, which allows you to basically tilt the map a little bit to have just a different view, really. But I don't use that. It's really helpful for, you know, saltwater guides that are out there where the water drops 100 feet at a time and they want to be able to see it a little bit better. But for freshwater guys, bass fishing, this is all you need, and it's a lot cheaper. So Kim, just go ahead and, can you tell me if you have a Lowrance or what product you have, and then I'll answer your question. Okay, cool. So the question, we'll stop here for just a second, because Kim said for winter drawdown on local lakes, which Navionics works best to show the drawn down level? He has a Lowrance Gen 2 Touch. So there's a couple things you can do. Probably the easiest thing is to use an app, the Navionics app, and adjust your water level. It will you just scroll it. You know, you can look at the lake, and you know, a lot of times the dam or the you know, there's like maybe a lake organization or something that shows how much that lake is down. You get that number. Maybe it's down 10 feet, 20 feet, or even like 84 feet, like this lake that I went to last fall. You can actually adjust that on your app, and it will change everything on your app right there. So that's the easiest answer. Now with Lowrance, the easiest thing to do is to adjust the depth shading. So basically what you do is, and without having screenshots, I'm going to try to explain this, but there's a setting in there in the map options that allows you to adjust the depth highlighting. And if the water's down 84, you just do 0 to 84, and all that will be one color. It will be either white or blue, depending on your graph, but it will basically, it just won't be there. I mean, it will be a different color, so you can kind of ignore that in your mind. So that's the two answers to it, but the easiest is the app. Just change the water level and it will do it. It's really easy to do. You can do that from your phone, your iPad, or you know, either one. Okay, so so the Navionics chart viewer. Okay, so it's starting to lag, it says. All right, hopefully we don't lose everyone again. It's crazy how much going on with this today. So the Navionics chart viewer is a really easy way to basically get all the Navionics data for free. You can only do it from any web browser, so from desktop, laptop, or your phone. Good question, Kevin. I will get to that. That's a really good question. But basically, it's used to be called the web app. It's free to use. Just go to navionics.com. Right up top, it says chart viewer, and it will show you the exact detail that you will get with your app or or in your on your phone, your electronics, anything. It's just basically the most up-to-date detail, and it's for free. The only downside is you can't take that on the water with you unless you bring your laptop with you. But here's an example. So this is the screenshot of the website. You know, this is a chart viewer, and you can see this map sucks. This is just the standard nautical data, you know, that a lot of graphs come preloaded with. You know, it's just basically what's available out there to the public that, you know, different electronics companies use as their base map, for better terms. But with pushing this little button down here, you can see that a little better. You want to move it over to the sonar chart, which is one thing that really separates Navionics, is that 1 foot contour intervals. You can see there's a lot more detail. You can see the flats, the river channel is a lot more defined. You know, it's a lot better. But again, this is free to view. Just go to the website, and this is a great tool to see if, you know, maybe you want to see what it looks like on your lake and you don't want to buy the card right away. This will show you what you will see if you buy the card or pay for the app. It's really that's what the tool's for, is to kind of try it before you buy it. So, you know, I've talked about the app a couple times, and, you know, really it's the most widely used boating app. I mean, if you go in the App Store, it's like the #1, you know, great. It's the same great detail as your plotter. I like it because, you know, a lot of times I'll go fishing with a buddy who may not have a Navionics card. I can just jump in the boat and look at my phone and find spots. It's really cool. It's available Apple, Android, Windows, you know, and then the iPad as well. There's a free and a paid version. You know, a lot of times they give you a free trial, which I think is running right now, but the free version is just going to have that standard data that I was showing you earlier. That's not the best, but it will still at least allow you to see where you're at, you know, and if you need to, you know, mark a spot, which you can do, you do tracks, routes, markers, and more. And then new to actually last year is once you mark points on your app, you can actually transfer those to your Lowrance with something called Plotter Sync if it's a wireless enabled graph. So it's really cool. That's, again, helpful. I mean, you could be sitting in your living room marking spots that you want to check out, and then it connects to your graph. You go out on the lake, and they're all there. Before, that wasn't possible. So it's cool that it's all seamless, and it's the technology is getting a lot better. Okay, got more great questions. So Chris, tell me what graph you have, and then I'll get to that. What model you have? Here's an example of the mobile app, a few more things that you can do. You know, this on the left is an example of what you would see with the free version. You know, it's good. It will still have, you know, detail, but on the right, it's going to have a lot more detail with the paid version. Okay. And then you see this right here. This is another cool thing. These are what's called community edits, where someone has marked a spot. It could be a hazardous area, could be a good fishing area that they put on there. There's a lot of those, and I found some that, you know, a lot of them don't apply to me. You know, say like troll a flasher out in 80 feet of water for silver salmon or something, but it's cool that people are sharing that, and that's something you can do. Or you could share, hey, you know, there's a rock here, you know, be careful. It's just something that users can add to it, which is something you can see. Okay, so we'll pause here for a second because we got some good questions. So Kevin said, is there anything like the plotter sync for the Humminbird? Not now. You know, it's always possible. I mean, the Lowrance thing's fairly new. You know, it is also available for Ray Marine as well. Okay, so good. So Chris says, what is the fish and chip setting? So basically what this is it's a layer that will change the difference between the standard mapping to the 1 foot contours. And it's fish and chip is what they also call it on Humminbird, but it's basically to enable the layer to get the 1 foot contour intervals. On yours with the Lowrance Gen 3, okay, I'm just reading this question here. Yours, you know, honestly, Chris, so the whole question is, what is the fish and chip question? I can't find it in my settings. I have 1 foot contours with my Canada Alaska chip, but I've heard I need to select that setting. If you have the 1 foot contour intervals, it's probably already automatically reading it. You know, with some of the newer software, that fish and chip setting is kind of going away, where it's more of an automatic thing, which is good because it used to be really, you know, complicated where you'd always have to adjust this setting. So I think you're good if you have that 1 foot contours. Okay. So Jerry, this question has to do with updating Navionics maps with the Regions card or with a separate SanDisk card. No, you actually plug in, you know, and kind of backing up. So with the Navionics cards, when you buy one, you get a year's of free updates. I don't do it every single day. I do it about once a month because, like I said earlier, the maps are constantly getting better. So what you do with that is plug the card into your computer. It comes with a reader, with like a USB reader, so it will work with, you know, laptops or desktops or anything like that. And then once you've downloaded the Navionics software, it recognizes that automatically, and then you just download the updates. And that's a good question. And you can just check my YouTube page. Again, it's Tyler Brinks. I think it's Tyler Brinks Fishing, but either way, you just search for it. And I have a how to update your Navionics card step by step, shows you all about it. So it's really easy. The more you do it, the less data that you're adding to it. So it's going to be a lot faster. You know, usually about 20-minute process. You just plug it in, say update, and it just downloads it and puts it on the card and makes the maps better. Good question, Roy. You know, honestly, I don't know if that lake feature is the lake level feature is going to come to Lowrance. You know, it's just something that you can only do it on the app right now. So I don't know. Okay, so good question, Michael. So he says, is ping speed the same as chart speed? And we talked about this earlier. It is not, but ping is how fast it's going. Some of the graphs that I've seen actually kind of, they show them both the same, but they are separate things. Chart speed is how fast it goes across. So like I said earlier, I kind of misspoke on that, but I definitely want the ping speed up and the chart speed up, both of them. I want it shooting down, back and forth, getting the most accurate reading, and moving over fast. Good question. Okay, I kind of already talked about this, but with the Navionics app, there's a lot of cool things you can do. You can, you know, see hazards, things like that. And it's actually helped me a few times. I mentioned that as well. So this is what I was talking about earlier with the advanced map options to adjust the water level. If your lake gets drawn down every fall and winter, this is a really cool feature. And a lot of lakes do get shallower. So it's a good tool to make sure that you have the most accurate, up-to-date detail. And it will actually change the numbers on there. You know, that question that Roy said about, is that lake level feature coming to Lowrance? I really hope so, you know, because like I said, I have that kind of workaround where you change the depth shading. So it, you know, for instance, on this, all this would be white or blue, depending on, I've seen it both ways on graphs, but the numbers will not change, which is kind of annoying, but it's just how it is. Okay, so this is a question that we had, so I was waiting for this moment to talk about it. So let's see where that question was. Okay, so with Navionics Sonar Chart Live, and this is something I use a lot, you know, not necessarily to catch fish, but just to improve the map that or the lake that I'm fishing that time. This is an actual screenshot I did of a lake, and you could see the changes there. You know, it's updating these changes. It will send them once my iPad is back to Wi-Fi, back in civilization. It will actually go to Navionics and they'll update the map. But it will also stay on your graph as well. But you, unfortunately, right now you have to have the iPad to save that data and update the card. But it will still be on your graph. So I think is that your question, Kevin? Does Sonar Chart Live update on your graph as you move around? It does. If you have a newer Lowrance, it will do it. But really, anything with a wireless capability, you can connect it to your iPad and see it right on your iPad, and that will save it and then make the map better. Okay, so good question. Okay, so for you, Kevin, so what you would need, it will not show on your screen, but if you have the wireless router, so the question is, he has a Gen 2 non-touch, and he wants to know if he can do Sonar Chart Live. So you'll need a wireless router, which looks just like a modem, and I have that on my boat, and that will allow everything to connect and work together. So Chris, will the Sonar Chart Live save to my card and be there for good, or do I need to keep up with the yearly subscription? So it's kind of two separate questions. So the Sonar Chart Live doesn't actually save to your card. I may not have been completely clear on that. It saves to your app. That sends to the servers at Navionics. Then you update your card, and then it will be on there. So with the yearly subscription, and it's kind of a lot of questions in one, but the yearly subscription is for a year when you get a new card. And then at the end of it, you just can't update it anymore. So everything that's on your card after that year is there. It's not going to get better or worse. So good question. There's a couple, Gene and Brad both wanted to know about the Navionics and Garmin connection. So Garmin did buy Navionics, and if you kind of a backstory, that Garmin products do not, or Navionics products do not work in Garmin, and now Garmin bought Navionics. So it's really complicated, but they are working together, and hopefully soon you'll be able to have a Garmin and put your Navionics card in there. So that's all I know, honestly, at this point. Okay, so Rick's question is, to connect to the iPhone, do I use the Wi-Fi or the personal hotspot? So basically, the Wi-Fi is from your graph, and then you use Wi-Fi from your phone to connect to the Wi-Fi on your graph. So if that makes sense. So your phone connects to your graph. It's not like a true Wi-Fi. It's kind of like if you guys use GoPro, how they have the app and you can connect your phone to that and then do everything with it. You know, that's you know, just how it works. So, you know, they connect together. Okay, it saves. Okay, we've got tons of good questions here. Okay, I'm going to keep moving, and then we're going to just answer all these questions. Okay. Okay, so it's a live mapping of changes. It connects to the app. I kind of went over that. So almost to the end. So keep these questions going. We're going to go ahead and rip through all the questions in the last few minutes. But I do have 2 more webinars coming up. Cold water bass fishing on February 27th. I do a lot of that. I live in Washington State, so it's cold a lot. And then a month later, targeting pre-spawn bass. Okay, so let's jump into the questions. Okay, so Kim, so the modem that you mentioned on your boat, can you give the product name? It is from Lowrance. It's the Go Free wireless router. Daniel or Donald says, is the connection between Bluetooth or Wi-Fi? It is Wi-Fi. Okay, Brian, right now I use the transducer built into the XI5 just because it doesn't get twisted up. Yeah, I mean, it is convenient, and the question is kind of related to that internal transducer that comes on a lot of graphs. And it does eliminate a lot of clutter. It does eliminate, you know, just a lot of hassle having to mount that external transducer. But if you have a big loop, when you mount it, so make sure that the transducer cable is long enough, and then have a big loop around it. Okay, so you're running up the shank of it and then make a big loop. That will allow it to twist back and forth and not get tangled up. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, Tom says, can you do the cold water webinar last month? It's cold. It's going to be cold for a while here, so that'll be still relevant here. Matt had a question about the Lowrance Elite 7 Ti about depth shading. You know, I'm not 100% certain on that unit, so I'm not sure. He's having issues with depth shading, so I'm sorry, I just don't know about that. So Rick said 0.1 is the best thing you can buy. So that's another great tool that I didn't really mention, but there is something from Lowrance called the 0.1 antenna. It's a lot more accurate for your GPS reading. And I agree. He said it's the best thing you can buy, and it really is good. Okay, so Brian's question is, would you suggest putting the Troy motor transducer that came on my Elite 7 Chirp that has down vision as well, or use a transducer that is installed onto my XI5 trolling motor? So it's kind of, I'm not 100% sure that transducer, if it has down scan. So it's probably the total scan transducer. A lot of times those don't mount very well on the front graph or on the trolling motor. So it just kind of depends on that. Yeah. Okay, so good question. Robert says, when you are video game fishing, do you use any of the options like bottom lock, or do you ever split the screens? You know, typically I have a 12-inch unit, so it makes it a lot easier when you're splitting it to still see 2 screens at once. I usually split it to have the Navionics map on one and then the 2D sonar on the other. And I do that because it allows you to see your trail. So if you you know, just get way off track for some reason, maybe you caught a fish, marked a waypoint, whatever it is, you can actually, you know, still see where you've been already, where you've caught fish. So I like to split the screen pretty much all the time, actually, whether I'm video game fishing or not. Okay. Okay. If you guys have any other questions, just go ahead and shoot them. We got a couple more minutes, so. Okay, I'll take a little pause here. If you guys have any questions, shoot them over. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I mean, I think that's about it, but I'm gonna send a follow-up email to all you guys. You'll have my email. Feel free to ask me any questions. I'll get to them. Again, for all of you guys that stuck with me, thank you for all these, you know, there's kind of a lot of issues with it crashing and things like that, but I am gonna, it is recorded. I'll clean it up, put the full version on YouTube, and any other questions, just let me know. And I'd like you guys to come to the next one. Like I said, it's in about a month. It's gonna be on, which one is that? The cold water or the, yeah, cold water's next month. So awesome. Thanks everyone. And we'll see you on the next one.